That was terrible.
Fuck you. That's why your Instagram got banned, and you're never getting it back. And you're always gonna be bald, no matter what you do. I know you're gonna see this. You're gonna always be bald and have a banned Instagram.
Sup guys, Derek, moreplays.com. Today we're going to be checking out the Adin live stream. This is one of the biggest Twitch streamers on the planet, and he has hosted Andrew Tate on his podcast multiple times. Well, I guess it's not a podcast, it's just a live stream. And more recently, this is post Andrew Tate ban on social media, and Adin is having him on still. And the tonality of the live stream is seemingly just like much different. He's like way less, I don't know, like just bending over to everything that Andrew says, and all of a sudden he's like condescending as fuck and just like trying to come across as like a really, he's just like chirping the entire fucking thing, and it's kind of awkward to watch, to be honest. But at the end of it, I noticed something that, you know, was kind of weird. And, you know, I don't know if it's part of the act or not, because to be honest, I barely watch any of his shit at all. I've been just kind of like tuning into like what's going on with the situation with the Tate, you know, blowing up on social media, the ban, all that kind of stuff. And he basically goes off and literally shits on Tate for not only being banned, but for being bald, and just like takes this weird turn. And I'll let you guys watch it first, and then I'll kind of give my reaction.
Stop.
No, you're a muffin. You need to change it. Well, how many times have you been to gym this week? Fucking 0. Do you not feel shame, Adin?
I do.
Been nice chatting to you,
Stop!
young man.
Don't go, bro!
Only if you sing, please don't go.
Andrew, please don't go.
That was terrible.
Fuck you. That's why your Instagram got banned, and you're never getting it back. And you're always gonna be bald, no matter what you do. I know you're gonna see this. You're gonna always be bald and have a banned Instagram. The #1 most viewed app in the world. You're banned on.
And you're bald.
Get your get back. Take a private jet, take a yacht, go to the Instagram headquarters, demand it, and they're gonna shut you down. But I thought you were God. I thought God can't get shut down. That's a shame, Mr. Tate. It's a shame.
Kind of fucking weird, dude. Like, I don't, does he do this often? I have no idea. But the thing I do know is that historically, guys who shit on guys for being bald, it doesn't typically work out too well for them if they're also prone to hair loss. So for example, Justin Bieber went on record way back in the day slamming Prince William for balding, like literally shitting on him, like as if he has some sort of control over it. And then he ends up starting to lose his hair, you know, many years later as he gets into his deeper 20s. And now, as far as I know, he's shaving his head. Could he grow out good hair? You know, I'm sure he could grow out reasonable hair. If he does grow it out again, I'm sure he'd get a transplant. Like celebrities, you know, have a lot of, you know, room to work with when it comes to, you know, transplantation, medication intervention, etc. But at the end of the day, you know, you're still getting fucked up and you're still having to do something about it. And for Adin to just come across and be like, you know, obviously this situation is kind of a unique, weird thing where it seems like Andrew kind of like gets on him for not working out and being out of shape, which presumably he's expressed his discontent with his own, you know, physical appearance from a body composition standpoint, and basically says how he is not motivated to work out and shit. So then, you know, it becomes a topic of conversation to motivate him to get into the gym. And here we see Muffin Fat in the comments of the Twitch chat, I guess. And I guess throughout this stream, he's been called a muffin multiple times, and he's just fucking had it. So instead, he basically says, fuck you, you're bald, and you're banned.
And you're always gonna be bald, no matter what you do. I know you're gonna see this. You're gonna always be bald.
Like, harsh, bro. So the thing that's fucked up about it is he's probably right. If somebody is actually to the point of like calcification, fibrosis in the scalp, like there's a certain level of like, you know, impossible to recover status where even if you were to literally transition from male to female with hormone replacement therapy interventions, you would probably not get to baseline. Like there's a certain level of like environmental fuckery whereby you are not going to adequately, like stimulate blood flow or like oxygenated tissue to an ability to actually regain like dead zones essentially. Like you could regain a lot with like normal interventions, but I mean, there comes a point where if you're bald for like a certain amount of time, like it's like use it or lose it with your hair follicles, to be honest. And if you have been, exposing them to miniaturization for years, and you're essentially, like forced to shave your head, it's a tall task to ever recover any semblance of like good ground realistically. And when I say good ground, I mean like to baseline. You can recover a fuck ton, and we've seen some pretty dramatic before and afters on the channel. If you just go to my hair loss prevention playlist, you'll see quite a few crazy ones, and you'll see individuals all the time recovering tons of ground to where they thought they were screwed. Like even Elon Musk, I don't know where the before and after was for Elon, but he had a pretty fucking wild change, although it did involve transplantation for sure. Still, it's, excellent. Like I'm pretty sure, is this the thumbnail for it? There, how Elon reversed his hair loss. Pretty goddamn impressive, especially considering he is way younger here. So this is like with age and, getting there. Again, though, like I have no experience with like hair systems or anything, so it could easily be a hair system and I don't fucking know. But I mean, I've seen some pretty good before and afters with just like medication, interventions, etc. And you can see them on my channel. Now with Adin, as far as I know, he is a 21-year-old guy going on 22 pretty soon here. And he has some hair for sure, but there's definitely some apparent cosmetic changes happening at a relatively expedited rate, which makes me think that he is prone to androgenic alopecia, and he has a genetic predisposition that is a bit more aggressive than the average man, to be honest. So if he's here already at 21 years old, like is he in a position to be making fun of somebody, regardless of what your opinion is of who he's making fun of or whatever the fuck? At the end of the day, like you can't control hair loss unless you intervene with medications, and yeah, like some lifestyle changes, dietary manipulations can help for sure. Like micronutrient deficiency is a very, very obvious thing to be fixing. But I mean, when it comes to androgenic alopecia and miniaturization of hair follicles, having a dialed in circadian rhythm, diet practices, etc., like unfortunately do not seem to be the only things that are impactful on if you're gonna lose your hair or not. Like I've seen some fucking homeless guys on the side of the road with the best hairlines ever, and they're stressed out of their goddamn mind, aren't eating for shit, are like addicted to drugs. Like, everything that, a biohacker would tell you is like the opposite of conducive to hair growth. But, and then they'll give you an example of, some guy with an optimized, fucking scalp massage practice and diet, and his hair looks good, so therefore it's gonna work for everyone. When in reality, there are tons of guys who are dialed in and have tons, or fucking bald. And then there are tons of guys who are literally homeless and, fucking passed out on drugs on the side of the road and have better hair than, us. So it's just what it is, man. Genetics and, medication versus without medication. It's kind of like, and the lifestyle, some component of it, but how significant at the end of the day. It's just a piece of the puzzle. So for Adin, he's almost going on 22, and he is already experiencing like very significant cosmetic changes, like I said. So is he in a position to be shitting on people for being bald over, something they can't control necessarily? It's gonna happen to him soon if he doesn't get on top of it. So this is something that, to be honest, I think he should definitely be careful with his words before he pulls one of these. But what can he do from a attenuation standpoint? Because he's not so far gone that he can not start making some moves and like get back the majority of what he's lost probably, and or prevent any further damage. And that is kind of where we get to the big three. I've done a video on the big three before. This is the combination of finasteride, 5-alpha reductase inhibitor, ketoconazole shampoo. It's just an over-the-counter shampoo that has a mild anti-androgen in it to compete for androgen receptor binding in the scalp. And this would be like testosterone and DHT, not just DHT, although obviously, DHT is very powerful. The likelihood you're going to compete effectively with it with fucking ketoconazole over the counter, essentially very, very negligibly. But again, you have to use a shampoo, and it's something that has an ingredient in it that actually does something. So I believe these studies compared it to like 2% minoxidil and efficacy outcomes from a actual hair count aspect. So to me, that is reasonable enough if you're going to be using shampoo anyways to have one with ketoconazole in it. So that is why I use one on a regular basis. And then after that, we have minoxidil, the main, growth stimulant, needle mover that is going to be the number one growth stimulant to actually get back dead zones, especially. It's going to be basically impossible to get back on just finasteride typically. But again, this is a growth stimulant that kind of improves the duration of the anagen phase of the hair follicles, keeps them in the growth phase, and also helps, spur on some new growth. But ultimately, this is kind of like the big three from hitting multiple different vectors. You have the 5-alpha reductase inhibitor with the finasteride that inhibits the production of DHT, which is literally the hormone that essentially dictates whatever transcriptional cascade of events leads to hair follicle miniaturization. A lot of people are very familiar with this process, although, the actual sequence of events is kind of irrelevant at the end of the day. Like DHT typically fucks people up, depending on genetic predisposition. So that's where a 5-alpha reductase inhibitor comes into play. In the literature, they found that male, I believe it was like pseudo hermaphrodites who were deficient in the enzyme that encodes for 5-alpha reductase, they actually did not go through puberty fully. These individuals would essentially be DHT deficient, but they would have normal testosterone levels from adequate Leydig cell stimulation from luteinizing hormone production, but they couldn't 5-alpha reduce any of the testosterone to DHT because they were literally missing the gene that encodes for this enzyme. I misworded that a second ago. The gene that encodes for this enzyme is essentially dysfunctional or just like non-existent essentially in these individuals, resulting in a complete lack of DHT. So they don't get, full-blown sexual maturation and differentiation. Rather, they do look like men, sound like men, have muscle mass like men, but they end up with micro penises and other kind of like androgenic functions are not like fully maxed out during puberty because they don't have that DHT. So yeah, obviously inhibiting DHT is something that can actually move the needle from a hair loss prevention standpoint very, very successfully. And this is where the popularization of finasteride came into play and where, deploying it would be one of the first like go-to tried and true treatments that definitely moves the needle in a big way. And for Adin, I think if he combined all three of those treatment options off the bat, he'd be pretty fucking solid and at least not only gain back some ground, but prevent any further loss. And that is where, I would definitely look at some of my material on, should you use finasteride? Yes or no? There are significant, potential side effects associated with it. And it freaks a lot of people out. Should be using a topical versus an oral? Does it make a difference? What dosage should you be introducing to yourself? How to double your minoxidil results. This is something that is, the most potent growth stimulant on the planet. But for some people, they're not a responder because of actual like scalp porosity or the environment on the scalp or the dosage being used in terms of, the amount in total being applied to the head. But typically it's going to be sulfotransferase enzyme activity, which actually converts minoxidil into the active minoxidil sulfate that we all need to actually induce hair growth. So if you're deficient in this, other thing, then that is going to be very problematic for minoxidil, but there are ways to upregulate it with things like tretinoin, microneedling, etc. But typically this 3 stack is more than enough for most individuals, especially with Adin. He might not even need all this shit. He might just need like, 5-AR inhibitor through like a low dose finasteride and then, a ketoconazole shampoo to kind of compete with testosterone that is lingering and remnant, from the DHT being, wiped out more and more diverted to total testosterone. I think that would be massively impactful for him and prevent further hair loss and perhaps even get back some ground. So for him, I don't know if he's already doing it, what his plans are, but that would be my recommendation. It is a general segue into discussing, what are the top 3 things you could be doing. In my opinion, it is the lowest effective dose you can get away with finasteride. I can barely fucking talk. And that is shown in the literature to be 0.2 milligrams per day. Now again, do you just want to dive head first and skip over the, obvious fact that 1 milligram is the actual prescribed dose, 0.2, 1/5 of that, is it actually still effective? It seems so in the literature. It is the minimum effective dose, and I believe that it is totally reasonable to start from there if you are weary of sides or you're somebody who has, gynecomastia development already, or you have, predispositions to, whatever it is from lack of androgens. Getting something in at 0.2 milligrams a day when you can clear it out of your system extremely quickly is not no risk, but I believe it's relatively low risk to a point that 0.2 milligrams per day is like a totally reasonable entry point for a lot of people, and titrating up to a 1 milligram. And then above and beyond that, using a ketoconazole shampoo every other day or every 3 days or whatever it is, and a minoxidil at least once a day. Now again, if you want to double your minoxidil results, you can do microneedling, which I've described on the channel as well as compounding your minoxidil with tretinoin. But ultimately, all of the guides to this stuff are on here, and you still need to actually assess if it's worthwhile for you and the ROI makes sense. Because again, with some of the good comes the ugly too. All of these drugs are drugs and have negative side effects associated with them. A friend of mine from just straight up minoxidil ended up with orthostatic hypotension and had like a weird autoimmune reaction. Some individuals, they take 5-alpha reductase inhibitors like finasteride and they end up with, really low DHT levels, and it affects their mood or affects their ability to inhibit gyno formation or whatever. Like, these are all things to flesh out at an individual level and actually educate yourselves about before you just haphazardly jump on it. I would recommend watching some of my old stuff. Should you use finasteride for hair loss, yes or no? Topical versus oral finasteride, which is better and why? All of these things are, very, very relevant, of course, but ultimately the main needle movers for the majority of people will be the finasteride, ketoconazole, minoxidil, and it is definitely worthwhile to add into your arsenal, in my opinion, if that is the route you're going to be going. As far as where I get my finasteride, it's prescribed by a doctor, as yours should be as well. I get mine through Merrick Health. The link's in the description below. You can get it through multiple different companies, or just go to your straight up physician and ask for it. They should hopefully not give you a hard time. But first, make sure you watch this video. Should you use finasteride for hair loss? Yes or no? It actually is a full-blown deep dive into potential side effects, the pros, the cons, etc. Typically, I see videos that are on one side or the other, and they do not present both sides of the argument. And this one, I feel like I did a pretty effective middle ground. And you can check it out and educate yourself about, finasteride's potential risks, what it brings to the table as far as positive effects, etc. But that is a good, worthwhile starter, kind of beginner guide for what I consider to be the biggest needle mover of these big three, with the second biggest needle mover being the minoxidil. But again, if you're just stimulating growth, you are not going to be really preventing further loss. You're just basically throwing water on the fire, but not enough water to put it out. You're kind of just basically trying to row upstream against a current when you could otherwise get the current down to zero with the finasteride, and then introduce the stimulation on top to then, be able to get up the current and kind of make progress and, grow back hair and prevent further loss of your actual native hair. So do not make the mistake of doing minoxidil only, also known as Rogaine, because you will end up losing further hair whilst you have no production from DHT or testosterone. Then again, also the thing that comes in for the testosterone component is the ketoconazole shampoo. And these are all linked in the video description as well below. You don't have to, buy stuff related that I use or, recommend or whatever. It's just what I'm using and what I believe to be high quality. For example, this is a fast drying, non-oily minoxidil, whereas most just make your hair look like shit and then you don't even want to leave the house, and then what's the point, if you have to apply it every day and you're not going to adhere to it. It just makes it way less realistic. But yeah, these products are all massive needle movers cumulatively in synergy. You could definitely make an argument that the ketoconazole shampoo is a bit of a negligible component of it, but it does to some extent compete with testosterone for AR binding, as well as, maybe remnant DHT to some small negligible extent. And then if you want to get into magnifying your results multiple fold, you can check out, the how to double your minoxidil results with microneedling, etc. There's a lot of other stuff you can do, but to keep it basic, the big three is the widely accepted thing that if you catch it early enough, you're going to be good. And I think Adin is at that point where he's right teetering on the brink of, can you still come back from the dead sort of thing, or is the Norwood Reaper going to come and fucking slay your goddamn ass? And it's coming, bro. It's coming in hot. So you got to be careful and, be wary of what you say about other people who are balding, because they can't fucking help it, dude. It's a genetically predisposed, biologically, predetermined thing that just insidiously butt fucks you. And if you don't have medications or are willing to use them, it's just kind of unfair, but it just happens anyway. So careful of what you're fucking saying. You don't want to turn into the next Bieber in terms of what happens. And, the big three, bro, would be probably the move. And I guarantee this would get better, or at the very worst, get no worse is kind of the goal of it, and seems to be pretty effective at that if you are consistent with your regimen. And yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. The bald shaming is always interesting. There's fat shaming, and I guess he was kind of getting fat shamed, even though he's not really fat, calling him muffin the entire time. So maybe I do see to a little bit of an extent how he got to where he's at. But I mean, he's had this guy on multiple streams. He's obviously like, you know, massively banking in terms of views and shit. And, you know, he's trying to get motivated to go to the gym, and he's getting, you know, like borderline, like a virtual kick in the ass essentially. And then he comes back because he gets cut off and says like, you're bald and you're always going to be bald. It's a fucking harsh stretch, bro. But anyways, so that's it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. All the comments help the algorithm and are much appreciated. Like, subscribe, check out my blog, moreplacemordates.com. Follow me on Instagram at moreplacemordates. Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, TikTok, couple podcasts. If you want to support the channel, you can check out anything I'm associated with in the video description below, including where I get my hair loss prevention products, from the shampoo to the finasteride, even to fast drying non-oily minoxidil. I don't currently use this, but if I had the time to do it on a daily basis with, you know, my filming schedule and just like the amount of shit on my plate right now, and I was confident I was going to do it for life, like I would definitely be using it. It's just the fact that this one in particular has a lifelong adherence essentially, where whatever you gain will fall out if you don't continue taking it. So I don't want to start it personally until if I'm like in that position where I can just like fully dedicate to, you know, making sure I don't fall off with it. But ultimately, you know, ketoconazole shampoo, very low barrier to entry. It's like not a drug at all. It's just a good shampoo that's ketoconazole in it. And then, you know, finasteride, you know, the biggest needle mover at the end of the day. In this study, they found that 0.2 milligrams still found a metric of success. Not as much as 1 milligram, but still good enough that if you are weary of side effects, you can start much lower, check if it affects you. And if it doesn't after a few weeks, then, you know, you taper the dose up. Or if it does, you can just come off really quick and it'll be out of your system very fast because it has such a small dosage being deployed, and presumably over a relatively short time frame, I guess, as well. But that's it. Let me know what you guys think. Comments down below. All those products, you can get them in the video description below as well. Talk to you guys soon.